that the biggest part of the population is those that either have not registered to vote or those that experience extreme voter exhaustion or voter apathy, something I've advocated for the last year and a half. Statistics show that the largest percentage of population are those that are either registered to vote and not aligned to a party, or those that have not registered to vote because they don't think real change will come, whether in the new opposition or the new government or in the existing one. So for us, we present a third option, the third force. A lot of people have talked about it and they've assumed other identities as the third force. That third force is the Democratic Union of Zimbabwe. And I'll share with you what we've been doing over the last several months. A lot of work has been put in to ensure that we provide something that is solid, something that is sound, and it gives tremendous hope to folks that have lost hope in the process of the electoral process for Zimbabwe and what the future means to them. And we'll share a little bit of that with you today. But what we want to do today is just make the announcement. What importance for us is we come to where you are on the ground. We'll visit every single province, every single constituency, every single district, and we'll come and share the message with you because we know that you're tired and you're exhausted with false promises and false hope. One of the best ways to rig an election is to have a fake opposition. And that's the reason why we don't see change. And we are going to bring that solution to the people of Zimbabwe. Let's talk about who we are. We are the Democratic Union of Zimbabwe, built by Zimbabweans for Zimbabweans. We have looked at every corner of this country to find the best talent in leadership, provincially, constitutionally, and even down into some of our wards. The very first thing we did as a party is put together a constitution before we did anything else. At the very top, the first thing we wanted to understand is who are we? And can people identify with who we are as an organization? So the first thing we did put together was a constitution. The constitution of the party is greater than anyone that leads it. In any successful organization, this is extremely paramount. In every successful organization, including government, the occupant of the State House cannot be bigger than the State House. The State House supersedes any human being's lifetime. Why change? And this is why change is necessary. So our Constitution allows even the party to decide if I'm a good leader or not a good leader. It allows you, the citizens, to decide if I'm a good leader or not a good leader, and elect someone that represents your interests. The second thing we put in place was a code of conduct. The way we carry ourselves with integrity is far paramount, and if the last 2 weeks have taught us anything, without a code of conduct in any institution, people have free rein to do whatever they want without accountability. And for us, that matters most. Integrity, accountability, keeping our family structures in order. Those that are married remain married. If they're women in politics, they're not abused or taken advantage of. So the code of conduct allows when money is transferred, money's moved around, monetary policies, that those are sound as well. Because if we can't self-govern, how can you expect us to take over the state funds, state policy, economic development, international trade? We can't do that if we don't have a code of conduct where we are agents of the organization. We are based on 3 policies, on 3 foundations. At the beginning of that, and the solid foundation, is prosperity. Prosperity means a lot of things, but let me first share the 3 pillars. We have 3 pillars of our organization: prosperity, justice, and modernization. And that's 3 things that we are focused on in the first 5 years in our government, 2023, 2028. In prosperity, which is the forward part of our organization in thinking, is we need our country working again. We need jobs. We need to put jobs in place, and not just any jobs. We need good paying jobs. We need a minimum wage policy that allows families to send their kids to school, to put food on the table, and even enjoy the luxury of a year's hard work. Maybe take one holiday domestically. Maybe you go to Kariba, maybe you go to Victoria Falls, you go to Great Zimbabwe, you go to Hwange. That the family can earn enough money, individual can earn enough money to put their kids through school. Buy land that you actually own and create prosperity. So that is defined differently by each individual. But the opportunity exists for us in Zimbabwe to do it. No other foreign national should be able to come in and benefit from what our country has to offer. We're educated, we're smart, we're hardworking, We want opportunity. We want to be able to thrive in that. Our prosperity process and economic development plan allows people to do that. The second pillar that we have is justice. Justice is at the center of our problems. Our judicial process does not protect the people of Zimbabwe. Nowhere in any industry we have things such as child marriages going on, teenage girls, young girls being pregnant. We have money being looted, funds being misuse of government funds, misuse of coffers. If anything happens, you don't trust that there's a process in place that protects you and is fair in the process in which it's supposed to operate. While that is an executive, part of the executive branch, one of the biggest things we're going to do is ensure that our judicial process goes through an entire overhaul, and that the Constitution of this country, before any amendments are done, is executed to the way it is written and agreed to. Through its execution, we can find where things need to be adjusted, but we don't adjust it until we have executed our Constitution. As a country, our justice system protects your wealth. It protects your well-being. It protects the country's own interests. Zimbabwe for Zimbabweans. Our national security is impacted by our justice. Our foreign direct investment strategy is affected by the way our justice system operates. Do people believe that there's accountability if they come and do business with us here in Zimbabwe? The answer is no. We have an energy crisis right now. Many people have come and said, hey, we've put plans in place to put energy resources, including myself in 2017. My company came and presented a plan for solar in this country in 2017. We faced two challenges in doing that. Is our investment protected? And do you have the ability to repay that project? And it's no and no. And any smart business person would understand that. So justice is very paramount to what we do and how we intend to govern in the future, and the trust that you have for the government you've elected. You have to trust that if something is not done correctly, that no one is above board. There's no sacred cows. We're all accountable. So that I believe the justice system is at the center of our problems and our challenges. The third pillar, which is my favorite, I love building, I love putting things together, is modernization. Boy, do we have work to do. Just coming here today was troublesome. One is I couldn't get my shirt pressed or ironed because there's no power at the lodge I'm staying. They ran out of diesel for the generator that was running all night to ensure I could work and prepare for this all night. The directions we need in the GPS would not work because there's no network, because some networks run on the power that's needed, the towers, and all sorts of issues that take place. Everything, if you look at every category, every sector in our country, nothing is functional. Healthcare, education, policing, our military don't have the equipment they need and the training they need to protect our country and our citizens, and to realize that they are protecting us and no other interest. They're there to protect us and protect our borders in our country. We look at our teachers, our union workers. We even look at some of the most basic functional jobs that exist today. We need to upgrade. Here's the beauty. Once we admit that we know we're rock bottom, we can start fixing the problem. Because where most countries have a challenge in infrastructure is upgrading existing infrastructure. Ours barely exists. It barely holds on. So we have a chance for a new slate, new projects and infrastructure, which are much easier than trying to rip out existing ones that might have been paid for a few years ago. Nothing has been upgraded. Whether in the GNU, they didn't upgrade anything, or in the current regime, nothing's really been put together. So in modernization, our economic plan and our manifesto is about 151 pages long, and is provincially based. Of course, we have a national agenda, but each province has its own projects and its own sets of development that adhere to those provinces, whether it's religiously bound, tribally bound, but the natural resources available in those communities, or what they're known for. Some are agriculturally based, some are mining based, and some are manufacturing. The biggest part for us in that economic policy is job creation and making sure that we implement a minimum wage policy. Inside that minimum wage, in any government, we want people to start working to put money back into the state coffers so we can reinvest that into communities. You cannot make withdrawals where you don't make a deposit. It's really simple economics. So we need people working. So our economic plan is really the fun part. And that's the hope that we have. You know, when I think about that, and I've traveled the country, I've been in Zimbabwe almost every month this year, working with our teams, talking to people on the ground, going through various think tanks on the business, on the private sector side. Our balance in understanding what the economic policy looks like, there's a very fine balance between what government initiatives are trying to do and where private sector intersect. It is very, very important that we understand that project. We need to work with private sector to ensure that they're successful in that programs, on the same side, helping us match the agenda of the government. For example, we know that if we increase wages and say we want a minimum wage policy, private sector is going to be affected. But we know that working with them, there are other areas of taxation and tariffs that really need to be reduced on import for them to be more functional. I'll give you one example. In automotive, some companies need cars, and they're coming in from South Africa. I believe the tax is like 100% of that vehicle. That needs to be brought down. We need the trucking industry back in our country. We need manufacturing back in our country. We are strategically located center of SADC. Nothing should be passing through us. It should be coming from us. So our economic policy, we'll be sharing that at our launch. It'll be up online. Our Constitution should be up online when we finish the conference today. You go on our website, you'll be able to look at our Constitution, our Code of Conduct, and we'll look at our philosophy, which I'll share towards the end. So the next question is, who am I? That's the real question, right? It's the fun part. I was born here in Harare. My mother is Zimbabwean. At the age of, right before my 3rd birthday, my parents passed away in a car accident. My father was working at Bindura mine, nickel mine. We lived in Bindura, my sister and I with my parents. 10 days before my birthday, which would be December 21, my parents passed away. Just a few days from now will be the anniversary. We both lost our parents in a car accident. We moved to Chinhoyi in the location with our grandparents, because obviously there's nowhere else to go. So those that have been to my hometown in Chinhoyi, I grew up in the location. I am a ghetto youth. I'm serious. I'm very serious. People are laughing, but some of them traveled with me the last few days. Our provincial coordinators traveled, and they saw that. They thought it was really a joke. I grew up, we never owned a car where I grew up. I went to Chinhoyi Primary. The headmaster there was my matron today. I'm still involved in the school's projects. I went to Chinhoyi High School. I was a cricket captain for 1 year at Chinhoyi High School. Because this is going to go around the world. But I am from Hunyani. My family has a great legacy in Chinhoyi. My grandfather was the first headmaster and the founder of Chinhoyi Primary. He lobbied the Ian Smith government to put the first black school that was non-mission based in Chinhoyi. And Ian Smith's government said, we'll come and audit the numbers to determine if you deserve a school in the location. And my grandfather went all around the area. He went to Alaska, he went to all the Lion's Den, all the neighboring areas, Bunket, and talked to all the folks that were working and said, you need to come to Unyani and you pinda Zimbabwean, go in people's houses. So when they come to audit, they think there's a lot of us. And he passed. He did, and the school got built. That was the legacy of my grandfather. He built a second one after that. My grandmother served a tremendous time. She was the first black employee, first Zimbabwean black employee at Chinhoyi High School. Many people have gone through her care. She was a matron for almost 50 years at Chinhoyi High School. My mother went to school there. I went to school there. So for those that start doing research, the investigative journalists, they will see that Chinhoyi is home for me. I am Zimbabwean. I am also the same person that helped get some kids back from Ukraine. So some of you saw that. And I only intervened in that one. And that was a very trying time for me because I just had a newborn son. He was only 2 weeks old. And I had to have a conversation with my wife and said, I need to serve my country. The government had made a public announcement that we're not going to rescue these kids and these people. So I quickly put it online and said, I'm willing to do it. I will admit that some folks in the opposition did step up. There was 4 of us total and maybe a few people on the ground. And we worked tirelessly to get these kids home and these people home. I believe the total number was about 128 that we got home. Parents called and communicated. We try to serve where we can. I am a father. I'm a husband. I'm a Christian, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of God. I believe that we need to serve our country. How did I come to this process? I have tried to serve in ways that were non-governmental. I've tried private sector to bring opportunity and business to the country. I've been a philanthropist, where people have contacted me and said, we've got a situation here, do you mind contributing? And I have. We'll send funds. But what happens is, we can no longer talk about charity in our country. We need to talk about prosperity and being able to manage ourselves and have infrastructure in place. So once I started diving into deep conversations with people that I respected, other Zimbabweans I respected, we realized we needed to change right at the very root of that, which is the government and politics. And we find ourselves here today. So a lot of work and a lot of time has been put into this process for us to reach where we are. And I'm very excited about that. The question is, why do we exist? Why does the Democratic Union of Zimbabwe exist today? People would say that there's other entities that are larger. I look back in history and think to myself, what is more critical to the people of Zimbabwe? We've had the same government that's been in power since independence and has done nothing to serve the people of the country. We've slid so far backwards, even our credit rating as a country is extremely bad. There are countries that have been through severe war that have a better credit rating than we do, better monetary policy than we do. They manage the inflation better than we do, and we've never been to war. So we look at what other candidates present themselves to say they want to govern and want to take over and help improve this country. And I look back at an organization, the MDC, and what was one of the most disappointing things that I saw and we experienced was the split of that majority of that alliance. Essentially, two people could not follow the constitution of a party for the people, and they split it. All the blood that has been shed since 2002, 2005, 2008, for them to split it simply based on ego and elitist attitude is the reason we exist, because they're no longer serving the people. This was the election for the opposition to get a majority in parliament. Even if State House wasn't the win, the majority should have been won in this election to put in place reforms. If we look back in the last 4 years, not a single reform has been placed in front of Parliament by any opposition or any other candidate to say something has to change in these areas. Everything that's been put in place or even approved is to suppress even more voices, even more opportunity. And this is why we exist as the Democratic Union of Zimbabwe. We believe it's not real. We believe that we've got too comfortable in a career of politics. Zimbabwe needs to see transition of power. Yes. It needs to experience transition of power. So in our government, at best, I can serve 10 years under the Constitution. Minimum 5 years. I have a life outside of politics, and those may look into that will discover very quickly that I have a very good life out of politics that I've created for myself as a kid that's an orphan that grew up in the location. I would like to think that I put something in place. Politics is not my career goal. But I knew that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't step up and try to change the conversation and put forward a solution that the people can really choose and say, we have done something. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Oh. She must sit down. Can someone get us some water?
Big businesses do not advertise because they are big. They advertise because they want to reach potential new customers. Advertising helps you move your goods off the shelves. Brand visibility.
Up to now, the upcoming elections. In the upcoming elections, one of the things that we looked at is the structures in our provinces. We do have structures in place. I know people are going to ask about that. They're going to ask about infiltration. Guys, it's the world that we're in, and this is the politics that we're in. You have to have measures in place. It happens. Infiltration even happens in large corporate dealings. There are things that take place there. When you're looking at the upcoming elections, electoral reforms, there's no time for them. If we're really being honest, there's no time for electoral reforms. What we need to do is work with organizations that are trying to make sure that we have the voters' roll accurate and in order. Now, if you see there's no participation there from political parties, it's because they may also be affected by the voters' roll. The voters' roll is not exclusive. It's not leaning one direction. It's not all the incumbents, saying it's all benefit the incumbent. There were some results that have come back that have shown that even the opposition might have also had where the voters' roll favored them in some areas. For DUZ, the voters' roll doesn't impact us because the past has not existed. This is, for us, is our first election. So we want it to be in order. We want it to be accurate. We want to make sure that the people that are listed there can go and cast their vote in the areas they're registered in. So we are going to support that, and we do recommend and require ZAC to support to provide that publicly so that can be verified in order to ensure a free and fair election. We talk about the same thing in free and fair election is free media, free access to information. We want to ensure that, do we have help? Is help coming?
Big businesses do not advertise because they are big. They advertise because they want to reach potential new customers. Advertising helps you move your goods off the shelves.
That. We're calling on the citizens to come and work with us in ensuring that, one is, our goal is to deliver the message of hope. We encourage you to register to vote, even if you haven't made a decision yet. And that is your right. They don't ask you who you're going to vote for when you register to vote. So register to vote so you have the opportunity, should you decide that there is a third force and it serves you. Statistics for us show us that you are the bigger population than either one of the parties today. The only thing we're left in our politics today is extremes. Extreme one party, extreme one party. The rest of the folks, all of us, are in the middle. And that comes to our ideology. When we wonder where we are on the spectrum, our name is the Democratic Union of Zimbabwe. We are center on this political spectrum. There's the far left and the far right. We are dead center. Our focus is on prosperity and creating jobs and making sure that people can feed their families and take care of their families and ensure that we start to upgrade our country. And it attracts Zimbabweans who are currently contributing to other economies to come back and contribute to ours. We want you to build our country. We want to keep our heritage. We want to ensure that we keep our religious beliefs and our local beliefs. So for me, I'll end there. And I want to thank you for the time. But our team is ready, we're prepared, and we're not here for the personalities. We're not here to play around. We're here to win this and start delivering change to our people. So I'll leave it there, and any questions available, happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have come to the segment where questions are allowed. If you have any question, please show by raising up your hand, and then we'll select you, then we'll proceed. Any questions from the journalists? Okay, we have a hand. Can you please state your name?
Right, Justice Freelance. I'd like to know from your second point when you're talking or discussing the issue of justice system. My question is, Zimbabwe being a multi-ethnic society, I believe that is the primary reason why there has been failure to align the modernist law to the traditional beliefs and freedoms which are guaranteed to Zimbabweans under the Constitution. What does the party intend to do to align that discrepancy? The second question is, what are your thoughts about the political actors dialogue Poland? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I should start with the last one, because that one's pretty easy. I mean, I've seen the beauty of technology today is you get a chance to, to hear. I know we've got essentially one news channel in the country, which obviously leans one direction. But today with things like Facebook Live, Twitter Spaces, you can hear from people that are being interviewed. And several people that are currently in Pollard have all been interviewed. And when you really come to the sort of substance and meat and potatoes, there's really nothing going on there. So it's just a club that has fringe benefits, which to some degree sort of looks like, some degree sounds like what we've just seen in the last 2 weeks, where people are just receiving, people's money, and they're falling asleep in a $300 million bed in Parliament. So Pollard, in that answer, for us, I don't see how our engagement in that. Right now, our goal is focused on the 2023 election, so there's nothing really there. A lot of brains and a lot of people that are very smart, but unfortunately, believe have failed to deliver for the people of Zimbabwe. In the first question, which is, how do we balance our traditional values against modernization, particularly when it comes to the justice system and judicial process? And this is why I believe that it's important that we also consult our chiefs. And we also recognize that we do have tribes in this country. We do have different tribes, different beliefs, and we have to create measures to respect them. And then we also have to recognize that we don't live in a bubble. Regionally, we have our colleagues from the north, south, east, west that live in our country. They come to our country for commerce. And then we also have the international community that is interested in what Zimbabwe has to offer. And so part of that, for example, when you're looking at things like, a member of parliament being jailed for over 200 days, and somehow the continued violations, or you speak out about something in a country that's supposed to have free speech and you're arrested or persecuted for it, doesn't really look good for business. So if we're saying that, hey, we're open for business, then we might need to introspect first and say, who are we willing to work with? So for us, in one of our monetary policies, people have asked us and said, when we're putting it together in our manifesto for economic development, what are some of the protections you have? The real thing is, with media today, if you understand business, just through association, you could lose opportunity. You may have not done it, but someone you seem to be associated with has done something extremely grievous. And people say, hey, because you're tied to that, we really can't be seen because it affects our shareholder value. It affects our global perspective. Perception these days, unfortunately, is a big factor in how people invest with you. So consulting provincially and putting policies provincially and then having an arching constitution and arching judicial process, I think is the best way to go. I think that even such things as the police has to be provincial. Do we have people, say in Matabeleland, that represent the people of Matabeleland, governing Matabeleland, to understand the cultural beliefs and norms in that area? Do we have people in different communities that represent those communities? You see this in progressive countries. If you go into, to the UK or to the US or into Australia and you go to Chinatown, in some cases you see the police officers there might be Chinese. They speak the language. They understand if something happens, they know how to de-escalate situations instead of escalating them. So when we look at these things of our judicial process, we will consult the leaders in those communities and making sure that there is a very fine balance in protecting the girl child, the boy child, and citizens of those communities.
Okay, I'll take this one.
Okay, thank you so much, Your Excellency. My name is Don Rosendo, representing the Voice of America. I would want to ask, do you think you really have realistic chances of becoming the president of Zimbabwe, given the traditional divide, where we know that Zimbabwe is traditionally a two-party system, where we have ZANU PF and CCC on the other end? Don't you think your ideas would work better in either of those political parties, rather than flogging a dead horse or a dead donkey, if I might say? We've seen before parties have come and gone, people with ideas. We saw it in 2018, we've seen it in 2013, in previous elections when we have candidates that seem to have ideas. But because of the kind of political system that we have, don't you think the people that are around you are lying to you, or they want to get something out of you? Don't you think it's not good for you to join either of those political parties to effect change, so that at least we have realistic chances of probably impacting in the lives of the people? Then second, what is your position on sanctions that were imposed on Zimbabwe by Britain
In the US.
and other countries?
Yeah. I'll answer the last one first. That one's pretty easy as well. I'm against them. The sanctions, while they are noted on individuals and people, the individual part, some of it makes sense because some of the funds do belong to the people of Zimbabwe. Illicit, funds belong to the people. Some of the institutions are very questionable. When I see, institutions that like our defense forces, our army, and our military industries on there, that affects us all, especially in national security. That's a real problem. The beauty is that there are opportunities for us to work with other countries, the U.S. and I hear this conversation all the time. They'll say, well, the U.S. will put pressure on other countries and so forth. Guys, with what they've got facing, these countries are facing, we're a speck to them. we sometimes over-exaggerate the importance. They just can't be seen. They want to do business with Zimbabwe, but they can't be seen doing business with if we have some of the things we're not reconciling. If we have got, folks being arrested, we've got people being killed, we've got people disappearing. There's just some things that they just can't reconcile with. So I am against the sanctions, 100%. But as a country, we need to introspect first. I think we take too much time wondering what people think about us instead of us looking at, are we treating each other in a way that is wholesome? That it makes it attractive people to come and say, hey, you guys seem like you're working well. Can we be part of you? Because the only thing we're left with is loan sharks, right? So the people that do have good infrastructure, good business, in some cases have a tough time seeing with us. So the sanctions are the sanctions. They make their decisions where they make their decisions. We can lobby for them to change their decision, but until we make a choice of our own to govern better, it's the only time we can come back and say, hey, listen, here's leverage. We have got a choice between working with these other countries or this other bloc from an international trade perspective, or not you, but we would need you to lift these things and make it easy for our people. Many countries have done it. Many countries have succeeded. One of the best impacts has been with Zambia. I don't know if you know this, but Zambia was one of the few, I think one of 3 currencies that didn't face inflation a few months ago. The Kwacha was one of the 3 that actually improved their grading through some debt restructuring. So very, very thoughtful ways to go about it, but I'm against the sanctions. Now, coming back to your question on the two-party, that there's 2 parties that exist, there's actually 3, because the CCC, based on popularity, you can say that it might, they give the guise of populism, but if you're really looking at the statistics and the numbers, which is seats in parliament, they're actually 3rd. So we really need to clarify that there is another entity that has bigger, more seats than they do. Whether we like it or not, that's just the play there. And they could reform themselves and restructure themselves in the same time frame. Is there enough time for us to make a play? There absolutely is. I don't like to lose. I don't intend to lose. Winning the election is one part. We've experienced that in Zimbabwe a lot before. An opposition has won an election. Transition of power is a different ballgame. That's a completely different ballgame. So winning an election has been done in this country. Transition of power is the real conversation, which I don't think we'll have time to discuss today, but I'm sure. But as we move along, as far as say delivering a dead horse or a dead donkey, we have a constitution, we have a manifesto, we have the structures in place beyond some other parties. People have come with great ideas, but they haven't put the process and structures in place to go and execute on those. We believe that we do. A day in politics is a lifetime. As we found out very quickly that when this situation of the $40,000 debacle took place in a couple of weeks ago, we quickly saw voter apathy take a pretty big hold inside opposition, where people had really wanted people to stand strong with discipline and focus, and they didn't. They didn't do that at all. So now people lost hope and say, okay, if we're really fighting corruption and misuse of funds, maybe our guys should have stood a little bit stronger. Maybe our guys should have had principle just before an election, just before Christmas, where people are not going to be able to put food on the table for their families. And we consistently see this. The question is, are they really 2 or is it 1? But they all look the same now, if we're being honest. And that's why I said we exist. And again, looking and saying there's only 2 parties is based on sort of an opinion. Again, statistics and numbers show, based on measures and questions on the ground, that voter apathy is people that have either not registered and can register to vote, and those that are registered to vote have not selected a party, are greater than either one of the parties. It is the greatest population. That is statistic. So that means that there is a 3rd function that no one has represented yet or has talked to yet. And so that's where we come in. So we do believe that for sure, that their opportunity does exist for us.
Any more questions? I think I'll take 2. I'll begin with you and then come to my brother, then you will just answer. You can go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Wesley Gatsi. I would like to ask a question about democracy. You say a democratic party, but from the political view that you've given us, that you're neither from the leftist nor from the right. You're in the middle. Doesn't it compromise your democracy in terms of you trying to join the capitalists since you say you are for prosperity, most prosperous organizations, they do come from the capitalist.
Sorry.
Oh, yes.
Okay, maybe my name is Willie Watimba for Willie Center. You mentioned the split of the MDC as probably one of the reasons that gave you information as a party. You mean to say before there was that split, you were perhaps in agreement with their ideas or what, and what has actually changed? And looking at, you also say the current opposition parties that we have are fake. That's what you say. What do you intend to, or what do you castigate as to maybe their modus operandi, or what do you intend to do differently?
Great questions. I'll start with the gentleman back here. For us, the center approach to politics is would not take away from democracy, what we would consider a democratic party. By no means. What we're saying is that we understand both sides. So extremisms on both sides, I think we're seeing that even globally, where you're seeing super far right and a certain set of group of people are ignored, far left, and we're seeing a certain group of people on the right extremely being ignored. Center simply means that there are things that we see on the left that make sense and things we see on the right that make sense, and we implement them inside the middle to ensure that everyone is represented. Now, the goal is not to please everyone, because there's no way that is physically possible with 15 million people in our country, but to ensure that policies do make sense, and as we move along, they can be adjusted freely, and not saying this can't be adjusted because it infringes on our extreme right or extreme left ideology. It's us to come to the table and say, do we have a process in place that says, okay, this group is lobbying for a change, and is there merit for it? And then we investigate that and make the changes necessary at the center. And you'll find that that has become some of the best policies you're seeing with countries that really are, even smaller countries that are extremely progressive, have become extremely prosperous. There's many examples of that. Norway, Finland, that are extremely prosperous, looking at center-based policy, focusing on making sure that people have livable wage, they're earning correctly, and that wage is protected. That they cannot be ripped off or taken advantage of by employers or by government, where people have choice and they have rights. So no, it doesn't infringe. In fact, I believe it actually adds more to the level of democracy, because you don't feel, you can be far left and advocate for your policy, and we'll meet you somewhere in the middle. You can be far right and advocate for an agenda, and we'll meet you in the middle. Should we find that it represents a big part, a part of the population that would want that change. So no, it wouldn't infringe on that at all. And capitalism is sort of a dirty word that's used, right? We're not using that word. We're using prosperity because it's defined differently. Capitalism would things like would take advantage of labor laws. It would infringe on people's human rights. We're talking about putting that in place and putting protection so no one is taken advantage of. We just want a fair wage. And then our job as government is to make sure that we have laid the groundwork for private sector to thrive. So, for example, manufacturing is one of our biggest opportunities. We want manufacturing to thrive. You know, I was recently in Guerrero a few days ago, and it was at the butter plant. We want that to reopen. We want that. You know, when I was in Ontario yesterday, we want our automotive sector to thrive. We want to come up. But when the companies come and they're coming to our country, we need to ensure that those negotiations, those contracts, represent the people of Zimbabwe, and that is our responsibility as government. So it's not only to attract the business, but to say, hey, when you're here, we need insurance plans. We need to make sure that if women are bearing children or having families, that there is enough leave, paid leave for them to go take care of their families before they can return to work. We want to ensure there's a pension plan that's in place and that pension plan is protected. So that's prosperity. You can call it advanced capitalism, but it's not sort of the dirty capitalism that might I don't know if that helps out. Awesome. And forgive me, so when I said they're fake, I didn't say they're all fake. I said the number one way to rig an election is to have a fake opposition. Now, we don't know who that is. But if I'm looking back in history, I think I would like to believe that we've come to a point where the promises are now not fitting anymore. And at the MDC side, prior to the split, there were already factions forming. They've consistently had this. And so what you try to do is you try to talk and have engagement, which I did prior to us doing this. I actually met with some people and said, hey, what could we do? Can we support you? Can we back you? Can we come behind you? I had no intent of reaching where I reached at this point, which is why I said I tried to reach this, to help our country privately, and now I'm doing it publicly, and said, hey, how can we create jobs? Can we bring infrastructure to the country? You can't talk about economic development without addressing energy shortage. So we looked at energy. We were looking at healthcare. So when we started having this conversation with some of these folks, I realized they really didn't understand how to solve the problem. Some of them, from a point of exposure, they didn't even know some tools existed. You know, I have challenged someone said, hey, that doesn't make sense. Do you even know what you're saying you're going to do? Do you even know how long it takes to put a deal like that together? You know, it takes longer than your first term in office, you know, to put that. We need jobs today. You know, how do we create economic development today? How do we create jobs today? So, for example, in our strategy, in the first 180 days, we have about 50 projects that are going to launch immediately, that we already started putting together and saying, in each province, we want to create jobs, because we don't want people to lose hope. So we need to implement instantly. So while the policies where I didn't agree to 100% inside the MDC, I believe there was an opportunity to restructure. I really believe that there was an opportunity where we can come and say, hey, how do we make this work? But the moment we started seeing separation, I knew right then we were going to have problems in Parliament. And we need that to change legislature. We need people in Parliament to be putting programs in place. We don't need parliamentarians being councillors. That's not their job. Then you start finding out some of these guys don't even live in the country. They helicopter into Parliament, and then they leave. Then they leave out. They're not even in here. So, and I'm not attacking them, but my goal today is the conversation around our governance and our politics is going to change, and it has to change. We have to think very differently about who represents us, and it's got to start at council, MP level. I think that's far greater than even the State House, is what happens in those institutions that holds accountable to the executive branch. So I have belief and faith that I hope that we can, us launching and us coming out and really putting pressure, allows others to introspect and say, maybe we haven't really delivered in the way we should deliver. We're happy to talk to them. We have an open door. A lot of them know me. I've met with some of them and discussed this conversation and said, you know, we can't win this alone. You know, we can't get change alone. We all have to come together, work together, but I don't think your messages resonate anymore with the people. You're not talking to the people anymore. They've lost hope because you've been saying this for the last 10 years. So for us is where we come into that third force. Again, the numbers and statistics show us that people have lost faith, and our job is to reignite that.
Can we expect any big names from the MDC, the CCC, ZANU crossing the floor, joining your campaign?
No one has expressed it, and we haven't had that conversation. So no, I don't expect that.
Are you welcome?
I leave that to the team. So we have a constitution. I don't make that decision myself. So if, you know, we understand and expect as a shiny toy right now, people want to come and play with us. So and in Zimbabwe's history, you know, some people break toys when they play with them. So so we need to pay attention to it. Again, that decision is not solely mine. We have a leadership team, and we have a process, a vetting process, even through the way that we select our candidates. There's a vetting process that goes through. Can these people represent the province, the constituency? Do they have the capacity to deliver? Do they have the capacity to stand for what is right? And even if they're not in politics, there are people that we've even approached outside of politics, but they're known in their communities as doers, as go-getters, and people that thrive and say, hey, listen, you want to serve the community? I took a step up. I want to serve my country. Why don't you join us? You have capacity, thought process, and you know how to connect with people. So that's what we're doing, but it's not my sole decision. Fortunately, it doesn't all hang on me.
I think we will close up. I'll take 3 more last questions and then we sum it up. I'll take you, sir, then back there. Who else? Sorry, I can see your hands. Okay, then I'll take her.
My apologies if I have addressed this before I came in.
No worries.
What is your unique selling point?
Great question. I don't think it's one. There's several ones of them. One is people see me now. I think we've got a lot of chatter in the back. People, yeah, we asked the guys in the back there to keep you down. Yeah, people have got, there's a perception of me that's out there because of my life today, right? So they think that I don't resonate with the plight of the people. but I grew up extremely poor. I grew up in a household that's very simple, very different. The difference for me why I was able to succeed at the place I am is because the country allows me to. Failure is not fatal where I have been, and I have failed many times. So that is a selling point is we have failed and succeeded. I do come from extreme humble beginnings. I come from a very poor family, but we're extremely educated and hardworking. I just happen to be fortunate to be in a country that allowed my hard work to pay off. And so I know, the selling point is there is experience in that. And for me to come back and say, this is functionally wrong. You know, one of the worst things I've seen here, I remember I stopped, we were driving to Mtare a few months ago, and we stopped in Marundera to get something to eat. And I think the kid was about 15 years old. And he came up and he said, sir, he had a bucket with a cloth brought in the middle of the day, should be in school, in the middle of the day, and he was asked to clean the tires of our cars that were in convoy to Mtare. And I said, oh, you don't have to clean that, they're not my cars, and we still have a journey to go. And I said, are you hungry? He said, yeah. So we bought him lunch, and I said, you can sit down with me at the table. And it was one of the most heartfelt conversations. This 15-year-old kid takes chicken and puts it in a napkin and puts it in his pocket. And I asked him why he was putting the chicken in his pocket. I said, I'll buy you another one. He said, no, it's for my grandmother at home. We have children that are family caretakers in our community. You know, so when I think of myself as an orphan, I get very emotional thinking about this. This kid should be in school. His mother is in another country trying to earn and sending money back home, and he's taking care of his younger sister and his elderly grandmother. We have a different situation where we have youth that have gone through university, fantastic degrees, but they're selling airtime on a street corner. And you think about what it takes to put them through school. There are family members that have sold cattle, have sold their livestock to send the child to school, only to come out and be on the street corner selling. So for me, the selling point is, any chance you can put that on vibrate? Thanks. So the selling point is that for me, I understand the plight. And I know how extremely disappointing it is to have that sense of failure. It does something to your dignity as a human being. So that's one selling point. The other selling point is I have experience with the global view. I have done large projects in my career. I've been executive for large companies, some that even have a bigger book than the GDP of this country that I've held there. Yeah. So here's a way to look at it. There's a job that is coming up for open, and there are applicants applying for this job, which is running the country, a state house, and is a civil servant. We're all applying for this job, and this is why I'm not trying to pick on any one person that's here, but the citizens are the owner of this business. You need to look at the resumes of your candidates, and then ask, can these people deliver? Can they do it? Some of you have to look and say, are they managing what they currently have now? And how are they managing it? Does it have integrity? Does it have accountability? Is it swift? Is it clean? You know, is it productive? Do they have experience that should they hit any roadblocks or challenges, they can overcome them, they can solve them, such as sanctions. You know, you need someone that understands, okay, how do we have a global perspective? Where do we go make the lobbying? How do we get around these sort of things? One of the things I've advocated for against sanctions is we need to look at digital currency. We need to look at blockchain technology. And you don't hear people talking about this because they may not be aware of this. And of course, that I might be speaking gibberish right now to some folks watching, but that experience allows us to quickly move while we fix other things in the background. So I think that it's not just one thing that is a selling point. Two, I believe I am also the youngest candidate on the ballot. I believe I'm 41 years old, so I believe I'm the youngest candidate on the ballot as well. So there's youth there. Again, global experience, and I love my country. I really love my country. For me, politics is not going to pay me. I might serve one term and take a step back and let the party pick its next candidate for 2028. And go back to private sector. You know, I love private sector. I love deal making. So yeah, it's true. So I love So I have life outside of politics. So I don't think I could live with myself if I never tried to change the conversation or change the country. So that's where I am. Thank you. I don't know if that answers. Thank you.
drawing from your history and interactions with the opposition, we hear that you are lobbying for the CCC secretary to join your party. Is this true?
Straight answer, no. It's not true. I think that article you're referring to with Honorable Wende, it was false. Yeah, it wasn't targeted at me, actually. It was targeted at him. And I think you have to ask the question why. I'll tell you that I met with everyone, so he's not exclusive. If the articles would have came out about who I met with, I think everyone would be on that list. And then, of course, then you realize that the conversation was not what that article portrayed. So I felt bad. I reached out to him and informed him that it wasn't us that made a statement like that. And then, you follow that trail and see whether the result led to today, you might have your question answered. But no, we didn't lobby for him. We have our leadership on our side.
Good.
My name is Josephine George Umirai. I'm a policy analyst. I'm an ardent woman for women empowerment. So my question will be based on that. I see on the panel of our party tools, I'm not seeing any females. What is your policy on female representation, whereby we are more than 51% of the population?
Right.
Are we going to get 51% representation in the party and all political structures?
Great question and great observation. And I will admit a failure on our part right now. Yes, and so one of the things is when I arrived, came and unfortunately I'm leaving because my family is moving to Zimbabwe permanently for the full campaign. So I've been in and out a lot, and if anyone's flown back and forth to the U.S., it's pretty treacherous. Yeah, it's pretty treacherous. So I've been shifting out of my role in the work I do while also managing and putting our background team in place, and then we moved to Zimbabwe permanently. I will tell you, in my travels with in our provincial teams over the last several months and meeting with them virtually or in person, we have a very big female representation. As a matter of fact, again, I go back to data, which we love data. Even the registered voters in Zimbabwe, female in every province outweigh men. It's very true. A lot of the plight, and this takes away nothing from the boy child, but a lot of things we're also seeing that are really damaging also towards women and young women. A question was posed to me in a meeting both yesterday and the day before in different provinces by our female representatives there. We have a lady Dems. We do have a lady category, a lady there. In fact, even a big part of my security is also female as well. It is, yeah. Men are easy to detect. Women are a little bit different. But we do have a very strong policy there. So they asked about that as well. What is women in politics and my take on it? And I think that, and it could be wrong, but as a political analyst, you might agree with this. It's been very challenging for women in politics. The name calling and the degradation degrading is just insane. The political attack, the media attacks that women receive in politics is shameful. But the other side of that is also there's a level of elitism that has also been formed with some females in politics where they've sort of gone to the top, where they're using education, looks, and so forth to get there. Has become a little bit harder for women to find themselves in. Some of them are not protected when they enter politics. They're sort of left on their own and they're attacked there. One of the things that I advocated for was to ensure that my relationship with my wife was really sound, that no females in our organizations are, and forgive me, I'm going to use the word, politics, it's damaging. It's so damaging. So being able to have that representation in politics, which I'm very surprised we don't really see even essentially the first ladies involved in politics in any opposition, or the first men, because we have female-led parties as well. We don't see them really involved if they have spouses. We only see the candidate. We intend to change that. My wife is committed and fully involved in our campaign as well. So I'm also a father of 4 girls. So that's very important to me. And I have 4 girls and 1 boy, and the boy's the youngest. And that's very important to me. So I grew up with a family of women. I only had 1 uncle, and I have 4 aunties. So we do have representation. Unfortunately, it's not present here, and we will correct that. But thank you for the observation.
Okay, I'll just take one more. I saw again someone. Yes.
Can we do it here?
Yeah, we can do it.
My name is Stuart Cancer. I have one question for you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
In the event that the Lord blesses you come into office, what is your goal to the war veterans which we have in Zimbabwe?
Great question.
Thank you.
Now, great question. And if you allow me to, I am going to group them with our military as well, because that is continuous. So right now we've got sort of this disconnect between active military and retired military. We cannot attract good people to our military if they see that we're not taking care of them post-service. We have to really connect the two. They can't be separated. And so we have to have packages in place, because the military is not just footwork and ground soldiers. Today, technology that exists, like one of the things we have in our policy is to introduce drone technology. I believe our Eastern Highlands may even be highly compromised if you look at the Cabo Delgado situation. We're right on the border of that, and if we don't have investment into our military, I think we will face some serious problems in our country from a national security perspective. But when it comes to the war veterans, they need to enjoy. We need to have structures in place that allow them to benefit from their service that they've given. The same would apply to teachers, would apply to medical staff if they're government workers, and regular civil servants. Even someone as simple as who might clean our streets out here. And if they've worked 40 years as government, we should have packages. The challenge that's there is that those packages have been looted. So you can't really provide them because you have to take them from somewhere else. So for the war veterans, we want to ensure that they are taken care of more than just the monetary side. I believe that there may even be levels of trauma we need to address that they've experienced and they're really left that way. We need to address things as PTSD. We need to help them create even functional unions where they are even part of the recruiting process and the process of grooming our military folks. And then they also help write history. We need historians to be able to interview them while they're still alive and take note of our history and start creating Zimbabwe history museums. People can learn about our history and what it means to us instead of learning about just colonialism. We need to learn about what they have done and what they've served and recognizing the communities. So we do have a structure for that as well, but I think that we need to connect and remove the barrier, the silo, that active duty and retired duty, they really need to be connected in that process.
Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for coming this wonderful afternoon. I think our presser ends here. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless Zimbabwe.
Thank you.